Okay, good morning, everyone. So we are now turning to, we've been speaking to the husbands. No, we've been speaking to the wives about the husbands. We are now turning to the husbands to speak to them about the wives in our series on just helps to understand your partner. Wrong word. Mazel said, do not use that word because it's being used in the culture, in the wrong context. So, your husband or your wife, your marriage, what's the word that I'm looking for? Spouse. Thank you very much. Spouse, your spouse. All right. So 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Everything that I am going to share with you over the coming 3 weeks, I believe, if it stretches into that, I should have over the next 3 Sundays finished this series. But everything that we are going to be looking at is trying to help you fulfill chapter 3 verse 7. 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 7. Husbands, in the same way, live with your wives in an understanding way. Peter says, and the Lord, the Holy Spirit, says to you, live with your wife in an understanding way. You've got to understand her. Why? As with someone weaker, since she is, and then you have your word woman there, right? In the Greek, you literally have feminine, female. What Peter is saying to you is, you are male, she is female. Live with her in an understanding way because she's different from you. She's not the same. And it's going to take some work to understand her. And it is important that you do that work, because if you understand your wife, you are able to live with her in a way that will reflect the glory that we find in the Godhead. Remember, we said that this is the immeasurable privilege that the marriage covenant has. It is the only crucible, only place on earth where the love and the unity of the Trinity can be explained, shown to the world. And so, husband, the responsibility falls to you primarily to understand your wife and through that to foster that unity. Now, important, Peter doesn't say tolerate your wife, right? He wants you to go deeper than just tolerating. He wants you to understand her, to live with her in a way that is helpful and God glorifying. So, while I'm not going to delve into a lot of text over this sermon, and I believe the other two, they are a bit top heavy on just, practical illustrations and practical survey data and that kind of thing, and then I want to get into practical how-tos. I do think it will be helpful. It's the same as the other 3 that we covered with the wives. I must say, I tend to, understand me correctly now, I tend to not like this kind of preaching, okay? I love getting into a text, getting into what does it say, and give it to you. So this one is not top heavy on that. It's a bit top heavy on the other side, but I think it's still helpful. Let's get through this, and I hope that the Lord will use it to bless you as well. And then when we're done with this, we'll get back into Mark, in our study of Mark. Okay? So, Lord, as we look at this last 3 sermons, I want to commit it into your hands, because we are looking at something that is common issues, common problems, common experiences that men and women experience in marriage. And I pray that this will be helpful, Lord, that you will grant that it will be useful to us and build us up and help us conform to your word, conform to the example we see and the model we have in Christ, who loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having washed her with the word. And we commit ourselves into your hands for that. Amen. So, there's a very common idea with men that women cannot be understood. All right? She is, it's like you go to the computer, you press Q and you get Q on the screen, right? But with women, you press Q and you get 4, or you press Y and you get L. You don't know what's going on there. I'm pressing the same thing. Yesterday I got Q, today I'm getting L. What's going on? Okay? And then sometimes when we see that, we go, ach, ek weet nie meer nie. Okay? And then we just kind of walk away. Now, what we're going to do this morning is I'm going to give you some practical reasons on why when you press L you get K or something, why things don't always add up. And I'm hoping that as we walk through these, you will get an understanding for your wife, get some insight, and be able to, next time you press the one button you pressed yesterday and you got this response, and today you're getting a different response, you will know how to react. Okay? So, it's kind of like I'm going to give you a map with a couple of coordinates. When you feel disoriented, you can go back to the map kind of deal. All right. Point number 1, something that you have to understand about your wife. The deal is never closed. The deal with your wife is never closed. Let me read you something. We have covered this before, but I think at this point it is extremely helpful to be reminded of the fact that your wife is literally wired different. Female is made different from male, right? One of the biggest differences that has an impact on your wife is she's literally got more gray matter than what you do. Male brains are white matter heavy and female brains are gray matter heavy. Now remember, I've said this to you before, but we are talking about, you've got a scale, right? And you've got the two opposite extremes, white matter and gray matter. We all fall somewhere within that scale, but generally the male and female population, if you have to plot it, you will see most males fall to the white matter side, and most females fall to the gray matter side. Okay? And what does it mean that the wife or the female has more gray matter? Gray matter contains the actual neuron cell bodies. It is where processing and computation happens. So more gray matter means more localized, intensive processing happening in many different regions simultaneously. That's really important. All of us know this, right? Women can generally keep more thoughts going at the same time than what men can. The female brain, with its greater gray matter, tends to process many things simultaneously. It can handle emotions and logic at the same time. So a woman can talk and feel at the same time. I'm going to explain that a little bit more later, but let me just get through all the differences, right? They can connect thoughts and feelings and words rapidly and naturally. They can multitask across different types of mental activity. Now, as I said, you've got your scale there. You might hear these things and think to yourself, I'm a woman, but I'm not altogether like that. I'm a bit more in the middle. Okay, but the point is, you have the kind of wiring that gives you different abilities from your husband. Now, husband, you need to understand that. This is why women can generally talk about how they feel while they're feeling it. Okay? Men, I know I'm like that. When I'm in a heated discussion with my wife and I get emotional, it's like I freeze up. I'm seizing. I can't do this. I have to work through this problem illogically and then get through the emotional problems. But I can't do both of them at the same time. The wife can do both of them at the same time. The processing and the verbal expression happen in the same moment because the grey matter regions involved are richly interconnected. That's why women can process as they talk. Most men have to process and then talk. The male brain, with its greater white matter, tends to process one thing deeply at a time. So you're like, I got to do this now, and when I'm done with that, then I can do the next problem. The male brain moves sequentially through tasks rather than simultaneously. It separates emotional processing from verbal expression. It connects distant regions of the brain rather than activating many regions at once. Everything I'm reading to you now comes from literal research that was done. Okay, so this is literally saying when we look at the female brain and we look at the male brain, they are different. Husband, you have to understand that about your wife. Peter says, live with her in an understanding way. Because she is female, she's different. That fact that male brains have greater white matter is why men generally need to finish processing before they can talk about what they have processed. The feeling and the words come sequentially, not simultaneously, like with the female brain. Now, that being said, when I say the deal is never closed, the fact that your wife has the ability to process both emotion and thinking, right? Logic, and she's able to process many things at once, something that you need to understand about your wife is that relational security is very important to your wife, much more so than to you. The survey data shows us that when asked about how often they think about the health of their relationships, 19% of women said they're conscious of it most of the time. 50% of the women that they did the survey with said it's often or occasionally in the back of their mind, and 20% said only during difficult seasons. That means, if you put it together, 69% of women have the state of the relationship, of your marriage relationship, on their minds regularly, not just during crises. And when the researchers asked what occasionally meant to women, they said it was several times a week or whenever something triggered it, even something as minor as a small spat. I would ask you, husband, do you think about the health of your relationship that often? It's just not there, right? Because we do one thing at a time. I'm at work, then I'm thinking about work. And then I get home, and then I'm thinking about, the leaking faucet and this problem and that problem that I'm trying to solve. Women can do many things at once. And some of the most important things to them are their relationships. A cross-check question produced an even stronger result. 4 out of 5 women, that's 80%, acknowledged sometimes feeling insecure about their husband's love. And then it was something that was interesting to me. Among women aged under 45, it jumped to 91%. And among women with children in school and younger, it was also almost universal that women have this insecure feeling that pops up quite often about their husband's love. And when that insecurity is triggered, it's not a mild problem that they experience. 8 out of 10 women said the "does he really love me" question left them feeling anxious, preoccupied, emotionally withdrawn, or even depressed. So in other words, the effects were visible and measurable. Now, what does this mean for your wife? I think I want to ask you to ask your wife about this. Okay? Ask her, is that really true? Do you really worry about the marriage that often? Because I don't think husbands realize how often that thought runs through their minds. What does this mean for your wife? Is that her security in your relationship has a very high priority in her world. Okay? Husband, you got to know that. It is something that is really important to her. It is not something that might be as important to you because you know, in your mind, you're thinking it's like buying a car. When I go car hunting, I do all the research, I do a lot of effort, to get the right car. And then once I got the right car, the deal is done. Marriage, we'd want to treat the same way. When I wanted to get my wife, I did all the effort I could to get my wife. And now that I've got her, I've got her. The deal is done. I don't put any more effort into that. Well, that's where we go wrong. That's where we go wrong. Okay? The deal is never done. That relationship to your wife is so important that she constantly needs you to give input there, to reaffirm your love for her. It's like your priority to provide for your family. Is that something that you think often about or just rarely, right? For me, that's something I think about all the time. That's my job. Now, your wife has the marriage health, the health of your relationship at the same level in her heart. That's not something she can put on and put off. She thinks about it and worries about it. Now, what can you do to help her? Remember, here's the whole point. Here's the first thing you can do to help her. Understand that the deal is never done. The deal is never closed. Your relationship with your wife is not a destination you reached. I find that many people think of baptism like that. I got to just be baptized, then I'm shop. I'm okay. Okay? Then, somehow the baptism puts me into a right relationship with God and that's everything. No! Baptism is just the start. It's your starting point where you give a public confession and now I'm actually roped into being a disciple of Jesus Christ. Exactly the same with your marriage. The day you married your wife was only the beginning of your pursuit. It's a lifelong journey. You're always pursuing your wife. You see, I forget the way that Joel James describes it, but it was striking to me. I just can't remember, but it left me with this idea. The pursuit is the goal. Right? The pursuit is the goal of your marriage. You are constantly pursuing your wife to invest in your relationship, to make sure that you get to know her better, to build on your friendship and your unity. Go with me to Ephesians chapter 5. I want to come back to this text again, so I'm going to just spend a moment in it, because I want you to see how Jesus treats the church, and I think here we have a very compelling example and exhortation to keep pursuing and keep reassuring our wives of our love. In chapter 5, Paul is talking to wives and husbands, and in verse 25 he says to the husbands, "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church, who gave himself up for her." Now, the picture there is Jesus is in heaven. He's giving up all of his privileges and his rights, taking the form of a slave so that he can pursue the church. So that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. So here's the picture of Jesus pursuing the church, to win the church, to cleanse the church, to save the church, And then in verse 28, he says, so husbands also ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. And then he says, think about how you treat your own body. Do you ever get to a place with your body where you say to yourself, okay, I'm clean, I washed it, I'm done, I'm never going to do that again? Or where you have an injury and you say, well, I've put the plaster on or the bandage on, I'm going to leave there for 3 or 4 weeks, I'm not going to take care of it. We don't do that with our bodies, right? We keep investing. You keep taking care of it. Paul says that's how you ought to love your wife, as your own body. Nobody, he uses 2 wonderful words. Nobody hates his own flesh, but he nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church. There's your picture. Husband, the deal with your wife is never closed. What is really important to her is the health of your relationship. I'm saying that to you because as a man, I know that's not something that comes up into my mind often. But I got to know it does with her. And given that, my job is to make sure that I'm investing, I'm nourishing and cherishing my wife so that that priority in her heart is constantly reassured and she can rest in your love. It's never, I'm sure you've all heard this thing where the I don't know whether it's the wife's asking the husband, do you love me? And then the husband says something like, didn't I tell you 20 years ago when we got married, and I'll tell you when it changes, kind of deal. Don't do that. Like, she's got to know today and tomorrow and the day after that you love her. You are committed to her, especially when you are not seeing eye to eye. You got to reassure her, because it's worse for her than what it is for you. She's experiencing that relationship and the break in that relationship at a different level than what you are. It is really important that you help her. Proverbs 31. I give you the husband of the Proverbs 31 woman. This woman is wonderful. She's this godly woman who takes care of her family, never has a lazy hair on her head. Notice what her husband does in verse 28. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband also, in other words, he also rises up and bless her, and he praises her, saying, many daughters have known nobly, but you excel them all. Now he's saying that to her, number one, that's reassuring her. He notices, right? So he's saying, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for the way that you consistently take care of the household. Thank you for the way that you take care of the children. Thank you for the way that you're committed to this family. Husband, thank your wife. Reassure her. Not only does he do that, I believe what he's doing there is he's telling that to other people. Right? That's a public declaration this husband is making. I have a wonderful example in Marzel's grandfather. He passed away, but Opa Henny. So he would so often sit in company and just randomly say, my grandmother, he would say her name and just say, Chiki is very, he would praise something about her. I don't know, she's so kind, or she's so beautiful, or he would just say that loud to her, jy's so mooi vandag. He would just have these wonderful ways of publicly declaring his love. Just a simple sentence in the midst of a conversation he's having with someone. It was always just so encouraging to everybody. Of all the things that I remember about this man, that's the one thing that stands out. how he encourages his wife and reassures her of his love and his affection. So, husband, the deal is never done. Understand that this about your wife. Number 2, her brain can have multiple windows open. You and I, we husbands, we move sequentially. I can do one thing at a time. But working as with computers a bit these days, I now know that you can have multiple windows or instances of the same program open. So you can right click and open another instance of the same program. You can have many Word documents open. Okay? That's all it's saying. Husbands, we are like, I can do one Word document at a time. Wives are like, no, we can do like 5 or 6 or 7 of them at the same time. Here's an interesting fact about the brain again. You've got your left brain and your right brain, and the one side is different from the other side in what it processes. Okay? The book actually references how the male and female brains use their 2 different hemispheres. Now this is quite interesting. Female brains have a larger and more active, what is called corpus callosum, right? The bridge between connecting the left hemisphere, where you have your logic and your language and your analysis side, and the right hemisphere, which is your emotion and your creativity and intuition. This means women can draw on both hemispheres simultaneously and fluidly. The male brain tends to operate more strongly in one hemisphere at a time. Thank you for that, Lord. Because I don't know how I would be able to operate if I have to do all of these things at once. You see, the male brain is either logical left or the emotional right, but we cannot do both at once. So, this is why a man in the middle of an emotionally charged conversation can generally struggle to think logically, and why a man deep in logical problem solving can seem emotionally unavailable. He's not choosing to shut emotion out. His brain is literally operating in a different mode. You got to wait. Let's put the switch off. Let's put the switch on. Okay? So, know that your wife is different from you. She's able to process both sides very quickly. Again, what does this mean for your wife? The survey data, if we put it together, says 79% of women describe their thought life this way. They have multiple thoughts and emotions running simultaneously. Is that bar? Okay, all the women are going like that. Only 21% said that they process sequentially like men. So among women under 45 and those who were young children had a 90 to a 95% agreement. And they have this long illustration in the book as well of how a woman was sitting at the table while the men were talking, and then the men would ask her, what are you thinking about? And she would list off a couple of things. I'm actually thinking of these 10 things. So, there's 3 key findings that came out of the research. First, most women juggle multiple thoughts and feelings at the same time. Second, about half of all women have stored thoughts or feelings from the past that regularly pop up into active mode, whether they want them or not. Remember what I said in the first point is, for a wife, the relationship is a priority, just as for you, providing is a priority, right? The relationship is a priority. When there's something wrong, or there was something wrong in the past, especially if it's a recent past that is unresolved, those things pop up. It's like they come up on the screen without them asking for it. It's something that bothers them. Now, if you are like me, you still don't get it. Okay, I'm going to help you just now. The third thing that came out of the research was that women are consistently unable to close these windows as easily as men can. So, let me put it to you like this, husband. When you have a relational problem, you've had some disagreement with your wife, you're able to walk away, switch off, and go on with your day. To the wife, she's not able to switch off. She might put it aside, like squash it into a corner somewhere, but it's going to pop up involuntarily. 19% of women polled said they could easily put it away, right? 22% of the women that they polled said they could try to put it away, but it takes a lot of effort to not think about the relational issue. 26% said they could with effort put it away and not think about it, but the thoughts pop back up until resolved. And then 23% said that they usually can't dismiss the problem at all until whatever is causing them is resolved. I've seen this with my wife, and I'm sure you've seen this with your wife as well. There would be some relational problem in the family, like distant, not even with you and me, and she's worried about that. And I'm going, why does that bother you? But it's a relational issue. It's something that's important to her. It's a priority. That means for more than 4 out of 5 women, closing out unwanted thoughts about relationships either requires serious effort or it's simply impossible. And the vast majority of women said those thoughts would never really go away until whatever was causing them was resolved. Maybe this helps you, because this really helped me just to be able to identify with what they're going through. Husband, and this comes from the book, the illustration. Imagine you are at work. It's Friday afternoon, we're about to close shop. But the business is doing really, really bad, and there's been thoughts or of ideas floating around that they are going to lay people off. Now, that if people are going to be laid off, you will probably be one of them for whatever reason. I'm just putting you into a situation, right? Imagine yourself in that situation. Then the boss, 10 minutes before you leave and they close shop, calls you and says, I want to see you on Monday. And he doesn't give you a reason, and he leaves you. You go home. Tell me, will you be able to put off Monday morning's meeting in your mind? What are you going to be thinking about the entire weekend? What's going to happen on Monday morning? Okay? Because in your heart, provision is super important. If you lose that capability, you got to do something about it. Your wife has that same level of priority to her relationships than what you do to your provision. Just as you would be able to switch off and not think about that the whole weekend, okay? Just in the same way, she's able to switch off and not think about her relational problems for the whole weekend. Can you do that naturally? Most men would go, no, I can't. Okay, now you begin to understand what she goes through when you are not relationally unified, when there's issues in your relationship. Or, like with my wife, if there's issues, somewhere in another relationship far away, they worry about it. So, husband, what can you do? Your wife has this ability where she has multiple windows. She can have multiple windows open. So she's going through her day. She's busy with her work. But these problems, these things that bother her about relationships pop up all the time. And she's not able to just switch them off. The first thing you can do is stop saying, don't think about it. Okay? That's like the least helpful sentence in the entire English language for your wife. Instead, help her close the windows. How do you do that? Well, if it involves you, listen and reassure. Okay? Listen and try to resolve. Start with listen. I'm going to say that every time. Your job is to listen first. Often your wife might just want to process while she's thinking. She's not wanting you to give any input. Okay? Maybe you should start by asking, do you want me to fix the problem or you just want to tell me? Okay? But if it involves you, help her close the window. Don't leave it open and walk away. Help her close the window. Number 2, if it doesn't involve you, ask, do you want me to solve this for you? Or you just want me to tell you want me to listen, okay? The first thing is going to be listen and then encourage her. Again, help her to close the window. Help her to process the problem and then move on. And if she wants you to help her solve the problem, listen and engage with her. I hope that helps you. I know that's simple and, but start with listening. Your wife processes as she talks, okay? So let her do that. Listen and then reassure. Help her to close the window. So her brain has multiple windows open and she can't just close them. But then this is where we get really personal, because sometimes one of those windows produces a reaction that seems to your male brain completely unreasonable. You've done the same thing you always do, and suddenly you're in deep trouble and you have no idea why. So we're watching this movie, The Incredibles. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a Pixar movie that I'm watching with the boys. And there's this one part where Bob, the husband, he's been doing vigilante, save the world kind of deals at night. His wife doesn't know about it. So he's all fired up when he gets home. He's like, because the Incredibles are not allowed to operate in the world anymore. There's whole history there, but they're not allowed to save people anymore. And so, he had to take a desk job and he has a very mundane life and he's very unhappy. But then he starts to do these vigilante things and he starts to feel like, he's feeling like a man again. So he gets home and he's all fired up. But his wife, Helen, well, she takes care of the kids. She takes care of her job. She takes care of all the responsibilities. She needs her husband, right? She needs him to engage. She needs him to take care of the discipline of the children as well, just to be involved in the household. And so he comes home distracted and distant because his mind is still on the job. He's been secretly moonlighting as a superhero, and he feels all engaged and excited. Helen is trying to hold the family together alone and is exhausted and disconnected from her family. This is the part where, she's stretchy woman, whatever. She holds the 2 kids and her arms wrap around the table and she picks up. He comes in like, you want me to solve this? Like a bear. I'm going to pick up the table and throw it down. And, At dinner, Helen is quiet and clipped. Bob notices, obviously, that she's not normal. Something's up. But he doesn't pursue it. He accepts her surface responses at face value. He then assumes he's fine. He assumes the kids are fine, and he goes back into his own world. He doesn't engage the problem. You see, from Bob's perspective, nothing specific happened. He got home, everything was normal. She seems a bit flat, she seems a bit off, but he doesn't know exactly why. He's asking her, but she doesn't say. And that's just how she is sometimes. And so Bob obviously doesn't pursue. From Helen's perspective, if you take the woman's perspective in that movie, the husband has been emotionally absent for a while. She's lonely in her marriage, and he just sat there at the dinner table and proved once again that he is really just not paying attention. And so she's upset. And he's going, why are you upset? Well, you're not there. You're not engaging. You see, he hit Q on the the thing, and he got S on the screen. And he's going, oh, and he walks away. Survey data again. Basically, what we're talking about is this male idea that women will stop making sense on a regular basis, and the only sensible thing is to do is to throw up your hands and leave home, or leave her alone until she calms down. Okay? I wish we could go to all the wives, is that helpful? And all of them go, no, not at all. So the survey data, the survey that they did, confronted this assumption directly. Women were asked which statement was true of them. 87% said, in most cases, even if a guy doesn't see it, there's a reason if I say or do not say something. Let me say it differently. There's a reason if I say or do things differently from day to day. There's a reason behind it. 9 out of 10 women insisted there's always a reason for their behavior. Now here is something to think about. Proverbs 20 verse 5. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. You know, there's a common problem that husbands, a common, let's say, wrong step we all commit when we find our wives being what we would say unreasonable. I'm asking what's going on. You're telling me nothing, but I can see something's going on. Okay? What she needs from you is Proverbs 20 verse 5. A wise husband will learn to draw her out. A wise husband, if you see there's something wrong, learn to be patient with your wife, learn to be kind with her, learn to be attentive. We husbands tend to want to, we tend to be impatient, and many husbands, when they find this, what they would perceive as something that is illogical, right? I don't see the rhyme and the reason behind your behavior. They get angry. That anger is what drives her even further away. I don't understand you right now, woman, and now I'm going to turn away. That is not helpful. I remember one of my friends one day telling me he'd been married for quite a number of years. I think at that point stage it was like 9 years, and he just came home. Not home. I was at seminary, and he was just telling me, he's explaining the situation with his wife, and he's like literally in his mind saying, "Who are you? Who are you?" And I remember that. I mean, we were just married. It was just still the honeymoon year. And I'm going, shame. My wife's not like that. Give it time. Give it time. So, there will be times where your wife will behave in ways that does not make sense to you. There is a reason. That's the point. There is a reason. Your job is to patiently, with kindness and attentiveness, draw it out. Okay? Don't just throw your hands up and say, I don't understand, and walk away. That's not helpful. So, you're going to use patience, kindness, and attentiveness to draw your wife out. So, those are 3 markers, 3, can I say, GPS points. When your wife seems to be, if you don't seem to understand her, remember, the deal is never closed with your wife. It really comes down to, if I can sort of summarize all of this for myself, my wife has our relationship and relationships as a priority in her heart. I have to understand that. And that means those things that are important to her that might not be as important to me, if I understand that, I will pursue her and help her, in those areas. If relational issues that's the area where she's far more, focused on than what I am, well, let me then invest in our relationship. Let me help her think through the relational issues she might have with other people and be invested. I think it's a summary of and a sort of a put together for myself, right? And I hope that helps you, husband, just to say she's not without rhyme and reason. No, there is a reason. She has different priorities from you because she's designed differently. May the Lord help you to serve her in that area. Father, we want to commit ourselves as husbands into your hands. You have called us to love our wives just as Christ loves the church. And just as he nourishes and cherishes the church, so we ought to do the same for our wives. But Father, I pray that you will give us grace and wisdom and help, Lord, to grow, because that in itself, just the way that we deal with our wives, will require that we will grow in our Christ likeness, in our kindness and gentleness and patience and self-control and joy. In all of these things, Lord, we commit ourselves into your hands, because it is from you, it is through you, and it is unto you that we live and move and have our being. Amen. Wat happened? Gaat ze terug? Wat het gebeur? Ja. Is het terug? Is het terug?
So stand for our final song this morning.